Please listen carefully.
Well, hello, universe. Welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Summers McKay.
And I'm Kristy Jansen, and we're part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to make it one focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy time to bring out the slow cooker-worthy podcast. Today is Tuesday, the 10th of November, 2020. Now, I have to start by apologizing to Amelia and Kristy because I kept them waiting this morning because I got, my late arriving COVID homemaker cooking bug today. And I had to saute onions and brown meat and roast the herbs, but I am cooking this yummy, a French Provence-y stew. And I had kidney beans and white beans, but I also had to use some black beans. And so that's what's in my slow cooker today, because it was cold this morning when the baby girl and I got up. Brr. What is this, Kristy? This is not summer anymore. This is no longer March.
Well, it is November after all. So maybe it's time for it to get cool, even in California. I actually did a bit of baking myself yesterday afternoon because my husband was really craving flan. So I made a batch of flan last night or yesterday afternoon. It's so delicious that I really, really, really wanted to have it for breakfast, but I didn't.
Okay, I would never even attempt flan. I couldn't even contemplate attempting flan. I don't even know where you cook it, but I imagine a stove or an oven full of just liquid sugar. I am so impressed. I am not a baker. Baking requires far too much discipline. I am like Le Poisson. I'm like the chef in Little Mermaid. I throw food everywhere.
I know. I saw the pictures from your kitchen this morning.
Well, I kind of have a confession to make because I asked my husband yesterday to get some beef chuck. I was like, can you just get some yummy, good beef chuck that I can use for a stew tomorrow? And I guess they didn't have any, but he got a bunch of steak, which he intended to grill. And then he got ground beef. Well, ground beef.
You got a steak?
Yes, I did. Ground beef simply will not do. No way, Jose. I'm not making chili. I'm making French stew. So anyway, it smells really good in my house. And I wish we could combine our efforts and I could use, your flan skills and you could have some of my stew. So I read, and I'm not sure if we talked about this on the podcast yesterday, so remind me if we have, but Land O'Lakes, the butter company, has had the best year ever in their business. And the butter industry has also had the best year ever.
I hadn't read that, but it's not that big of it's kind of a surprise because butter is usually used in a lot of restaurant cooking. That's why restaurant cooking is always so delicious.
Right.
So maybe people are just bringing that home and they're cooking at home. And I think that's why bacon has done really well too.
But then we have this sad poultry industry. And I'm sure you've read that the turkeys, there's this situation with Thanksgiving here in the United States and turkeys that, the way that the turkey farmers manage these turkeys is that they hatch them so that they reach a certain size by the time it's Thanksgiving time. And they're too big.
Yeah. I hadn't read that, but I was just thinking about that because this year's Thanksgiving is completely different for so many families. I mean, mine included. I have been contemplating baking a turkey, but for when you have a smaller group of people, what are you going to do with all that extra bird? Right. I mean, we should just have chicken. I don't know.
Exactly. You could do a couple Cornish game hens and call it a day. But I will say I love making turkey. I am mostly meat-free, right? But this time of year, I get really into stews and turkeys and bone broth. So I think this year I'm going for it with a big turkey.
I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I think we'll probably end up with a turkey too. But that is a confounding situation for all the farmers who were growing these 20-pound birds. And some households don't even have an oven that's big enough to bake a turkey in. So that's another issue.
We don't have an oven big enough. We have a barbecue.
Oh, well, maybe we should post some
Yeah.
barbecue recipes so for people who don't have big ovens.
In the late summer, I was posting stories about my orchids. I will definitely look for some barbecue recipes because
All
how to
right.
barbecue a turkey. All right.
Well, let's get into today's solution, Summers. What's the story that sparked your imagination today?
Out of the kitchen and onto the city of Austin, Texas. I'm a big fan of Austin. I've spent about 6 or 7 weeks of my life there. I once shot a television show there. And I just think the people are great and the art is great. And I love the city of Austin. And so that's why this story got me very excited today. The headline reads, City of Austin votes to spend $7 billion to revolutionize transportation. Now, Austin is a city where I guess roughly 3/4 of the residents drive alone to work. I'm sure that's changed with remote work for a lot of people, but huge amounts of traffic really confound the city of Austin. In their recent vote, they recently passed 2 new propositions that will invest more than $7 billion in a transit system and another $460 million in pedestrian and bike-friendly roads. Austin has a pretty temperate climate. It's pretty reasonable to assume that people might walk or bike to work most of the year. So, as part of this plan, the city also reserves $300 million to ensure residents aren't displaced from their homes as a result of gentrification. Now, this is one of those solutions that takes lots of different things into account. It recognizes that the citizens and the individual members of the community are frustrated by traffic, so it's identifying green solutions to reduce traffic, which will obviously improve the air quality in the city and reduce the emissions of the city. And then they're also recognizing that gentrification is a very consistent outcome of investment in infrastructure. I love that Austin is doing this. I'm very excited to see how it all comes together. I'd love to hear from anyone who lives in Austin. What do you think of Mayor Adler's estimates and what you guys think of sort of the next phase for your metropolis? Obviously, things are changing and it'll be interesting to see. So I really like the story and I love to see cities invest in transportation grids.
Well, and I think that what's so important about this, and even with the subsidies to deal with people who are displaced from their homes from this, is that transportation and housing, these are systems that are interlocked and interrelated.
Yes.
And when you build an infrastructure that wants to move away from the car-oriented infrastructure that is the current situation into a future infrastructure where you have more public transportation and bike and other ways of moving around, it also will certainly affect how people live and where they live and how the homes are constructed. I think this is quite forward-looking, and I'm very interested to see how it develops.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we may have to take a trip over to Austin to see how they pull it off.
Well, speaking of
Yeah.
future systems and investing in new infrastructure, the headline which caught my eye, which is probably not a big surprise to our audience, the headline reads, New power plant uses liquid air to store renewable energy. And this is a type of battery, actually. It's a way of storing energy that isn't using the minerals, the lithium ion, or other kinds of materials that I wrote about a few weeks ago in talking about renewable energy and electric vehicles. But this is a form of energy storage that stores energy in the form of liquid air. And this is coming out of the UK. And its work has begun on what's thought to be the world's first major plant to store energy using this process of liquid air. And basically how it works is the plant uses surplus electricity from wind farms to compress air so hard and make it so sort of cold and compressed that it becomes liquid at minus 196 degrees Celsius. And then when there's peak energy demand, it'll warm it up and the rushing wind basically from that air will drive a turbine to make electricity, which can then be sold back to the grid. So it's using the excess wind when you have an overabundance, instead of having to curtail that, to actually store that extra energy in the form of super, super cooled air. I just think this is so brilliant. It was developed by this man, Peter Dearman, who is a self-taught backyard inventor. That's the other reason I loved this story, because it shows that invention doesn't have to happen with, these brilliant, huge R&D development budgets, although that does help. But you can come up with some pretty interesting, innovative ideas, even if you're just a guy or a girl.
Yeah.
Just an inventor. And if you have an idea that has merit and you can show that it might work, you might be able to then get funding. And that's what Peter Dearman did. He received a £10 million grant, which is about $13.4 million from the UK government to bring this idea to commercial scale. And this new facility will be located near Manchester, and it's being designed to store enough power for roughly 50,000 homes for 5 hours. So that's quite a lot of energy to store. And if you think about it, if we had that kind of a situation, maybe there's a different solution for California, but with all the excess solar, instead of curtailing it, if we can store that, maybe hydrogen, that's another really good long-term storage that you can use that excess electricity to convert the hydrogen, which then can be converted back into electricity at peak demand. So I just like this story, and that's why I wanted to highlight it today.
I find this story to be very fascinating. From the angle that I look at it, I love the inventor-entrepreneur track, and I love the idea of whether it's youth that we're talking about who have invented something that then gets folded into a bigger organization that can help them grow, or these, backyard inventors. This inventor-entrepreneur opportunity is ripe, and this is definitely where the future is headed. So small ideas and big ideas work together to create new solutions.
Note also, though, that he was then able to get a grant from the government. And so it's got the backyard inventor entrepreneur, but it also has an investment of public funds. Yeah. So it's that public-private partnership also, which is super important to remember.
Well, we have some other amazing headlines on the Optimist Daily today about individuals who have done outstanding things, including one from Yosemite, which is one of my favorite places on Earth. Emily Harrington becomes the fourth woman to free climb El Cap in one day. Congratulations, Emily Harrington. There is a nasal spray that may help prevent COVID-19 in remote areas. Need to get away? Here's a 5-step healthy guide to healthy escapist travel. I love travel. I miss it. Ooh, Kristy, this one's for mermaids and historians. Yeah, go for it.
There's a diving program that's teaching kids to document sunken slave ships. And I love this. It's diving with a purpose. That's a wonderful little story. There's new research showing that kindergarten readiness can influence high school success. And then an article about how now that the elections are over, there are still ways that everybody can continue to participate in democracy. There's some tips there. And there's a promising flu vaccine that's derived from tobacco plants that has just passed clinical trials.
Yeah, that one's very fascinating. I know the flu vaccine, everyone, hopefully you've already gotten your flu shots, but if not, there is still time. And last but not least, in fuzzy creatures, ecologists discover 2 new species of fluffy marsupials in Australia. So if you need a little fluff to smile, we've got that for you too. Thanks everybody for listening to today's Optimist Daily Update and the update on my kitchen. We promise, in addition to sharing stories from our home, that we will share positive solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in this changing world and ensure it is changed for good. We promise to cover the current events with accuracy, legitimate sources, and offer you the information needed most to chart new paths for all of us.
And please consider becoming an emissary on theoptimistdaily.com. And for just $5 a month, you can support reader-funded independent journalism and be a part of the solution-changing consciousness that addresses our world's biggest challenges with a problem-solving mindset. Let's keep the Optimist Daily free to all who need it, supported by those of us who can. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.